"We're surrounded," the SEALs cried. Then the female snipers' shot blew open the armored line. The wind crawled over the Afghan valley like a living thing, hot, dry, carrying dust that tasted of metal and smoke. Lieutenant Nora Hale lay flat against the ridge, her cheek resting against the cool steel of her Mk-13 sniper rifle. She didn't blink. She didn't move. She learned long ago that stillness was its own kind of courage. Below her, nearly 1,000 meters away, SEAL Team Harrier was moving in a staggered line through a shallow wash. What should have been a clean recon pass felt wrong. Too quiet. Too empty. Even the birds had vanished. Nora adjusted her scope. Her heartbeat slowed to a steady beat she'd trained into herself. * 58 beats per minute. Calm. Calculated. Ready. *. Through her glass, she caught a flicker of movement behind a cluster of rusted trucks half buried in sand. Her radio hissed. "Overwatch, this is Harrier 2. Area seems clear." Nora didn't answer immediately. Her finger hovered by the trigger guard, not touching, not rushing. Something was wrong. The air felt heavy, like the world was holding its breath. Then she saw it. A shimmer of metal. The curved edge of armor. And she knew. They weren't alone. The explosion didn't sound like fire. It sounded like the earth itself cracked open. A wave of sand and heat blasted upward as a buried IED detonated near the SEAL's flank. The shockwave rolled across the valley, rattling Nora's ribs even from the ridge. She watched Harrier team dive for cover, some already dragging the wounded behind rocks barely big enough to hide them. Her scope jumped to the left instinctively. That's when she saw them. 3 armored technical trucks, moving in from the north like wolves closing in. Behind them, fighters pouring out, scattered in disciplined lines. At least 40. Maybe more. The radio crackled with panic. "We're surrounded. We're surrounded. Multiple hostiles, armored line, east and north. Harrier 6, we need orders." Nora keyed her mic. "Harrier 6, this is Overwatch. I have visual on hostiles. Advise." She didn't finish. A voice cut in sharp, commanding, strained. "Overwatch, hold fire. We need air support. Do not engage." Commander Mason Rudd, team lead. Experienced. Respected. But right now, cornered. Outnumbered. Bleeding men on the sand. Nora exhaled slowly. At this distance, one shot could change everything. But only if she took it. Nora closed her eyes for half a second. Just half. Just enough to steady the shaking memory pushing up from her chest. She'd heard that order before. Hold fire. It's too risky. Let the men handle it. 2 years earlier, during qualification trials, she broke the long-standing range record. The first reaction hadn't been applause. It had been suspicion. You sure she didn't get wind calls fed to her? Maybe it was luck. Women don't make precision shooters. Not for real ops. Nora learned to swallow doubt the way soldiers swallow sand during long patrols, quietly, without complaint. Back in the present, the valley cracked alive with gunfire. Tracer rounds sliced the air around Harrier team. The armored line pushed closer, emboldened. Confident. They thought they had the SEALs pinned. Nora's jaw tightened. On the radio, Rudd barked, "Overwatch, hold position. Do not engage without my command." She steadied her breathing. The armored vehicles were forming a crescent. If they locked it, the SEALs wouldn't make it out. Sometimes orders protect people. Sometimes orders bury them. Nora wrapped her hand around the rifle grip. She didn't need permission to save a life. A scream cut across the radio. Raw, choked, agonized. Nora's scope snapped to the source. A SEAL, Corpsman Ellis Grant ***, was dragging another operator whose entire leg was drenched in blood. The wounded man's hand twitched weakly, leaving a dark streak in the dust behind him. Arterial bleed. The kind that ends quickly. Ellis stumbled behind a cracked boulder that barely shielded them from the advancing fighters. He pressed both hands into his teammate's wound, shouting something inaudible, drowned by the thunder of 12.7 mm fire pounding the ground inches from him. Nora felt her chest tighten. Not fear. Urgency. She keyed the mic. Harrier 6, your medic is exposed. If the armored line gets 10 meters closer, he's in their direct fire path. I can crack open a lane for exfil. One shot. Rudd snapped back instantly. Negative. We wait for air support. Nora looked again through the scope. The turret gunner on the lead armored truck stood tall, yelling orders. His weapon was pointed straight at Ellis. If she waited, he would die. Her breathing stilled. Her world narrowed. One man. One shot. One chance. The crosshair hovered over the gunner's temple. The man was confident, too confident. Standing high. Exposed. Commanding the assault like he had already won. Nora felt her heartbeat slow into silence. 500 meters. Wind steady. Breath half-held. Trigger weight known by memory. Her finger tightened. Smooth. Controlled. Like exhaling faith. The rifle kicked back gently, the sound drowned by the chaos below. Through the scope, she watched the bullet find its truth. The gunner's head snapped sideways in a sudden bloom of dust and red. His body dropped into the turret like a puppet losing its strings. The armored truck lurched, confusion rippling through the fighters behind it. Nora didn't blink. Her radio screamed instantly. Overwatch fired. Overwatch fired. What the hell? Mason, turret is down. They're pulling back from the left flank. Who took that shot? She answered quietly, voice like steel wrapped in calm. Harrier 6, this is Overwatch. Your lane is open. Silence followed. Not disbelief. Not anger. Something else. Respect trying to form, but not ready yet. Below her, everything had changed. One shot, and the armored line cracked open. The moment the gunner fell, the battlefield hesitated. Not long. Just a breath. Just enough for men on both sides to realize the world had shifted. The armored vehicles, once moving with hunter-like certainty, slowed as their formation faltered. Fighters who had advanced confidently now ducked behind rocks, scanning the ridge with sudden unease. They didn't know where the shot came from. They only knew it came from somewhere high, and from someone who could split steel shadows with a single pull of the trigger. Down below, Ellis looked up from the wounded SEAL. His face was streaked with dirt and sweat, but in his eyes was something close to hope. The pressure on them eased, just enough for him to breathe, just enough to shield the man beneath his hands. Commander Rudd's voice finally returned to the radio, taut with conflict. Overwatch, what's your position? Ridge east. Line of sight on the entire valley. A pause. This one longer than any before. Copy. Nora didn't need praise. She needed another angle. She swept her scope left. The second armored vehicle was pushing forward, turret rotating, searching for the source of the impossible shot. They wouldn't hesitate long. And neither would she. The metallic grind of the approaching armor pulled Nora backward in time. Not physically, but into the memory she carried like a locked box inside her chest. 3 years earlier. A convoy ambushed not far from here. Her first deployment. She wasn't a sniper then. Just a marksman attached to an infantry unit, following orders, believing skill alone could save everyone. It didn't. Her squad leader, a man named Reyes, trusted her shot more than she trusted herself. But when the ambush pinned them and Reyes screamed for her to take out the machine gun nest, the lieutenant that day had refused. Hold fire. Too risky. She'll miss. Reyes didn't survive the next minute. Nora had never forgiven herself for listening, for obeying an order that came from doubt instead of strategy, for watching someone who believed in her fall because she didn't believe in herself. Back in the present, the valley thrummed with danger. Rudd's voice broke into her thoughts. Overwatch, can you take out the second turret if needed? He didn't say permission granted. He didn't say I was wrong. But he asked. And that meant something. Nora steadied her breath. This time, no one would die because she held back. The second armored truck pushed forward with purpose. It wasn't reckless. It was confident, too confident. The fighters around it moved like they knew armor meant safety, meant power, meant the Americans trapped in that valley were already halfway buried. Nora tracked the turret gunner through her glass. He was crouched lower than the last one. Smarter. She'd have less than a second the moment he presented a clean line. Wind shifted. A soft push right to left. Barely noticeable. But to a sniper, it meant everything. Her breathing softened into invisibility. Below, the SEALs were repositioning. She saw Mason Rudd, helmet low, rifle tight, shouting orders as rounds cracked around him. He was pulling his men into a tighter defensive wedge, trying to control the chaos. Trying to buy them minutes they didn't have. The armored turret paused, rotated, stopped. A perfect side angle. Nora squeezed the trigger. The rifle barked. The bullet spun into the valley, slicing through sunlight. The gunner's body jerked, then slumped forward into the turret. The armored truck screeched to a halt. The fighters behind it froze. 2 shots. 2 turrets down. Confidence shattered. Fear began. Nora barely had time to confirm her second kill before the fighters reacted with brutal precision. They weren't amateurs. This wasn't chaos. This was a rehearsed countermeasure. Dozens of hostiles surged forward around the disabled truck, laying down suppressive fire in a wide fan that forced the SEALs deeper behind the rock. Bullets punched the dirt around them like a storm of steel raindrop. The wounded SEAL's cover was nearly shredded. Mason shouted over the radio, "Overwatch, we need right flank support. They're closing in." Nora shifted her scope. The right flank was minutes, maybe seconds, from collapsing. 10 fighters pushing hard, trying to circle behind the SEALs. Her finger brushed the safety. She could take 3, maybe 4. But 10? That would take time she didn't have. Shots she couldn't waste. Her radio hissed again. Ellis, voice breaking. "They're getting too close. We can't reposition. Grant won't survive being moved." Nora's breath tightened. There was no angle that solved everything. Not from here. Not from one rifle. Unless... Her gaze slid toward the third armored vehicle, the only one still functioning. If she couldn't kill the men, she could kill their momentum. She repositioned the rifle. One more shot. A different kind of target. This target wasn't a person. It was a hinge. A small exposed connection on the left tread of the third armored vehicle. Barely visible, barely reachable, barely real. Most snipers wouldn't even try. Too far. Too small. Too risky. Nora exhaled once, slow and honest. This was why she trained until her bones ached. Why she studied mechanical vulnerabilities instead of sleeping. Why she shot in desert storms until she could read wind like a second language. If she hit it, the tread would snap. The vehicle would buckle. The line would collapse. She steadied herself. Wind shift. Distance. Drop. Her world shrank to a single bolt of metal. She squeezed. The crack echoed across the ridge. For a moment, nothing. Then the tread exploded sideways, whipping off like a steel whip. The armored vehicle lurched violently, half of it slamming into the dirt with a screech of grinding metal. Fighters scattered in panic. Their formation shattered. Their assault stalled. Lines broken. Momentum gone. Nora allowed herself one breath. Below, the SEALs surged forward with renewed strength. The battle had tilted. And everyone knew who tilted it. With the armored line broken, the entire battlefield shifted like a tide turning. Commander Mason Rudd didn't hesitate. He saw the opening, saw the confusion rippling through the fighters who moments ago believed victory was inevitable. His voice tore through the radio. "Harrier team, push left. Use the wreck as cover." The SEALs moved like water over stone, smooth, coordinated, disciplined even under fire. 2 men hauled the wounded operator toward thicker rock formations while Ellis kept pressure on the wound, his gloves slick with blood. Bullets still cracked through the air, but their pattern was different now, scattered, panicked, unfocused. The enemy fighters weren't advancing anymore. They were reacting, scrambling, trying to regain control. Nora tracked them through her scope, ready to pick off anyone who tried to reorganize. But Mason's voice returned in her radio, sharper, calmer, more grounded than before. Overwatch, your shots open the valley. Keep eyes on the ridge. Don't let anyone push our right. Not hold fire. Not wait. But trust her to guard their flank. She repositioned, scanning the chaos below. If the fighters regrouped, they could still overwhelm the team. But Nora was ready. She was past hesitation. Past doubt. This fight wasn't over. Not yet. The enemy realized it too. Their armored line was gone, but their numbers weren't. A cluster of fighters, maybe a dozen, broke off and raced toward a series of rock ledges that would give them elevation over the SEALs. If they reached it, they'd have angles Nora couldn't cover. They could rain fire across the valley, pinning Harrier team again, undoing everything she'd fought for. Nora swung her rifle toward them. Her mind went silent, completely still. No fear. No hesitation. Only clarity. She took the first shot. A fighter dropped instantly. Second shot. The next fell before his rifle touched the ground. But the group split, half ducking behind stones, half sprinting faster. They were learning, adapting, making her job harder by the second. Her radio buzzed. Nora, they're climbing. We need those ledges clear. It was Ellis. His voice wasn't panicked anymore, just tired, urgent, trusting. She fired again. Missed by inches. Wind shifted suddenly, hot and sharp. She adjusted. Shot again. A hit. But 3 fighters reached the base of the ledge. Nora clicked to her last magazine. She wasn't letting them take that ground. Not while Harrier team still breathed. Nora felt the familiar burn in her chest, the one that always came when she stood at the edge of failure. But this time, she didn't recoil from it. She leaned into it. She remembered Reyes, his laugh, the dust on his boot, the way he believed she could be more than the doubt around her. She whispered under her breath, barely audible even to herself, "I won't let you fall again." She fired at the first climber. His grip slipped, body tumbling down the rock. Another shot. The second fighter was struck before he reached the top. The third reached the edge. He raised his rifle. Nora didn't blink. She fired mid-breath. The bullet caught him in the shoulder first, spinning him sideways. His foot slipped. He dropped his weapon, clawing at empty air before disappearing behind the ledge in a cloud of dust. Silence followed. No more climbers. No more threats on the high ground. For the first time in a long time, Nora felt the weight in her chest loosen, not disappear, but shift, as if the ghost of her past had taken a step back. She breathed deeply. She wasn't fighting memory anymore. She was fighting for something, for the team she was saving, for the soldier she had become. Gunfire thinned out across the valley, not because the fighters had retreated, but because they were out of options. Pinned between the SEALs' renewed push and Nora's unforgiving aim, their confidence cracked completely. Some scattered into the dunes. Others tossed rifles aside and hid behind broken metal. A few tried one last desperate charge. Nora tracked them carefully. Not out of anger. Not vengeance. Purpose. She fired only when they threatened the SEALs. One by one, she clipped the aggressors. Clean, controlled, necessary. The valley floor became still in pieces, rhythm breaking apart like a storm finally losing momentum. Then the radio chimed with a sound she'd been waiting for. "Harrier team, this is Falcon. Air support inbound. ETA 90 seconds. Relief rolled through the valley like a warm wind. The danger wasn't gone yet, but the outcome was decided. Mason's voice came through, quieter than before. "Overwatch, you kept my men alive." Nora didn't answer. Not out of disrespect, but because her throat tightened in a way she wasn't ready to show. Words felt too small for the moment. She watched as the last organized cluster of fighters bolted toward the hills. The valley belonged to Harrier team again. When Nora finally stood, her legs trembled with the weight of adrenaline leaving her body. She slung her rifle across her back, and started the long descent toward the valley floor. Dust swirled around her boots with every step. Below, the SEALs were gathering, some exhausted, some limping, all alive. Air support roared overhead, sweeping the last pockets of resistance from the ridgeline. The wounded SEAL was being carried toward medevac extraction, Ellis still right beside him. Mason Rudd looked up as she approached. For a moment they just stood there. Two soldiers who had never agreed on how this day should go, now bound by the truth of what actually happened. He removed his helmet. His voice was rough, sincere, stripped of pride. "You saved us. All of us." Nora met his eyes, not defiant, not seeking approval. Simply steady. "Just doing my job, Commander." He shook his head. "No. You did more." Around them, the valley that once echoed with violence now felt strangely quiet, like the land itself was acknowledging what she had done. Nora finally allowed herself one small, tired smile. She didn't change the world today. Just saved the part of it standing in front of her. And that was enough. Later, long after the dust settled, the military would talk about what happened in that valley. Some would say it was tactics. Some would say it was luck. Some would say it was timing. But Harrier Team would tell it differently. They'd say it was the woman on the ridge. The sniper who didn't wait for permission to save lives. The soldier who shattered an armored line with a shot no one else would have taken. They'd remember how she stayed calm when the world shook. How she held the valley with nothing but breath, discipline, and faith in her own aim. And when people asked Mason Rudd what changed his mind, he always gave the same answer. Doubt didn't stop her. Fear didn't stop her. Orders didn't stop her. She saw danger, and did what she was born to do. In a war where moments decide everything, Nora Hale proved that one steady heartbeat, one clear mind, and one perfect shot can rewrite fate itself. The valley remembers, and so will they.